Okay, this is Ryan Kingsline. Welcome to the second part of our texturing with photo reference. In this part, what we are going to do is use that photo reference as a base for our sculpting. There are a couple of ways to think about sculpting when we get to details, and one of them is to just create the sculpt first and then line up your texture afterwards. But what we're going to look at today is a slightly different approach. In this approach, we are going to sculpt our model to a certain level of detail. We're only going to worry about the major forms, the bony masses, the muscle masses, some things along those lines. But we are not going to get into things like wrinkles, crow feet, any of that. Instead, what we're going to do is let our texture guide us along to creating all of those details. So we're going to go through a process right now, divide our model so that it's upwards of 1 million polygons. Then we're going to take the texture that we had on it previously, and we're going to apply that as a mask. But when we do this, we're going to see a few artifacts that come from the fact that, one, our photo reference came from JPEGs. So there'll be some JPEG artifacting, and it's also only 8-bit because it's a texture. So eventually we're going to convert our texture to a 16-bit, but in the first step, let's see what happens when we use an 8-bit texture as a mask. So we open up the masking subpalette, press INT for mask from texture intensity. Then we'll turn the texture off so that you can see the mask. And all of our texture details are there. So let's move the tool palette over, go into the deformation palette, and we're going to do a bit of a two-step here. We're going to inflate 5, and then we're going to smooth 10. And we're going to repeat that process a couple of times. We might want to go into masking and turn view mask off so we can see what's happening a little bit better. You can see the wrinkles and everything have already started to come out. So we're just going to inflate 5, smooth 10 a few more times. Alright, and you can see all of that detail that we're getting in there. It's a lot of detail. But when we zoom in here, I want you to see, we've gotten a lot of detail, but a lot of what you're seeing is a result of JPEG artifacting and an 8-bit limitation. So when we get to 16-bit, you'll see just how much smoother this is going to be. Okay, so now we've selected our texture. We go to the texture palette and we say make alpha. And it's still an 8-bit image, so now we've got to take that 8-bit image and convert it to 16. So we go back to the alpha palette and we press crop and fill. This will resize the canvas to the size of our alpha and fill our alpha with it. So you can see when we zoom out, there's all kinds of artifacting and tiny details. Not to mention, right in there you can see all the JPEG artifacting. But also the height of this, the amount of Z depth that we've added is too much. So we're going to go into the alpha depth factor, and we're going to turn that to 8, and then go back in and say crop and fill. So that's a little bit better. But still all of that JPEG compression. So we want to be removing that. We go into the tool palette, select the blur brush, select Z add, lower our intensity and turn off RGB, and we go in and we just blur out all of that artifacting. Okay, so now we're going to go in and just modify this canvas a bit as well. Select areas that we want to emphasize. We go in with the deco brush, turn Z sub on, and we can just go in there and kind of push those wrinkles in even further. We could use the inflate brush to inflate the wrinkles out. Then use the blur brush on them again to just blur it all out a little bit. Okay, so when we're ready, we go up to the alpha palette and we press grab dock. That'll grab the height value of our canvas as a 16-bit image that we can then later on go and apply to our model as a mask. So in this case, I'm saving out the document. That way, if I want to make any adjustments later, I can. Then I press New Document. Draw my model onto the canvas. I have the alpha selected in the alpha palette. My model's at 1 million polygons. I go to masking and I press ALP, mask from alpha intensity. So we're going to zoom in on just the eye area for this, just to get a good look at what it does. And then we go in and we press inflate 5, smooth 10, and just keep repeating until we get something close to what we want. Somewhere in there I store a morph, somewhere in the very beginning, so I can unpaint all of this for the ears. And there we go. You can see it starting to pop into place. Incredibly fast. And it's making the most out of our texturing and simplifying our modeling, giving us all of the bits of reality that are going to make this just really pop. So you see where all of those wrinkles come in along the forehead and the crow's feet and the area around the cheek. And when we apply the texture, it's perfectly synced with our sculpting. Then we can go in with the inflate brush, small draw size, lower our Z intensity, and then just start sculpting and adding weight to all of these wrinkles. This is just the first step, and this just gives us our base. It's a very fast way of establishing some kind of base. Then we have to determine how are these wrinkles overhanging, how much fat is there in there, what's going on with the gravity and the form and all of that stuff. But it gives us an absolutely wonderful start for all of that work. So here we see the ears a little bit too inflated, so I select the morph brush and I just unpaint the inflation that we did earlier. But it still has some of the texture because we did a few inflates before we stored the morph. So now we go over and do the other side. So thank you very much for watching, and happy pixeling.